those mid-range kind of Eldrazi with Thought Knot Seer and Matter Reshaper. Matter Reshaper is kind of essential to actually fill out your curve for this colorless deck. You don't get a ton of options for what you can play at that point in the curve. And Thought Knot Seer is just an excellent card.
It's going to be a Shambling Event for Soorani and Mark starting up on Majoring Network. As his lands are all colorless, he actually plays 4 of this storage land for Magic Origins.
Yep, a lot of colorless lands showing up as 4X here.
Yeah, the Gaia Reach Sanitarium added. Now that one's out of Eldritch Moon, but it's a 1-of in his deck. A free one as it's legendary, but first play will be from Saheen, and this is actually a good one. It's Liliana the Last Hope. I'm not sure that I expect her to kill anything this game, but as the Eldrazi deck's slow, Saheen will be looking to emblem the Planeswalker.
Yeah, Mark did not have a turn 2 Hedron Crawler, so that's kind of where Liliana gets the most value, and now with the Matter Reshaper, he should be able to start applying pressure to the Liliana's loyalty.
I mean, this looks like a Saheen deck through and through. Turn 3 Planeswalker, turn 4 second Planeswalker, and Narset Transcendent.
And this is the kind of board position where Mark might be wishing that he did have those Reality Smashers. Trying to pressure these 2 Planeswalkers, especially through the Liliana, will be a little bit problematic for him.
Yeah, Liliana keeps Matter Reshaper down to 1 power, so Mark's really not going to make dents on these Planeswalkers' loyalty. And as he's an all-colorless deck, it's not actually... He doesn't have too many, say, removal spells or ways to get these walkers off the board.
Right. The big thing he's trying to get to, getting to that 10 mana point, actually casting Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger. He can deal with 2 Planeswalkers very cleanly that way, though his early spells are not going to have much to say about these.
Yeah, he keeps Liliana down at 4 with the Shrunk Matter Reshaper, plays a second one, and if you're wondering all these colorless lands, we'll kind of go through them. He's got a Majoring Network with 1 counter, a Ruins of Orin Reef, that's the land that puts 1/1 counters on his colorless creatures. He's got a Westvale Abbey and a Gaia Reach Sanitarium.
Yep, and actually playing 4 copies of Westvale Abbey in this deck. It's not great at presenting 5 creatures to sacrifice, but Westvale Abbey flipping into Ormondal is just so good. Hard to pass up on, especially with the 4 copies of Spawning Bed in the deck.
I love Shaheen's play here. Oath of Jace. Now, we see Control decks play this one just as a regular control card. However, there's that second clause on it that Saheen is going to take full advantage of.
Sort of like a 3rd Planeswalker here.
Shrinks a Matter Reshaper and passes. So yeah, Saheen will scry 2 at the beginning of each of his turns. That's great.
Can start trying to find the cards that are really going to matter in this matchup, though. Interestingly, Saheen really wants to be able to exile these creatures. Not a ton of ways to do that. He does have 1 copy of Anguished Unmaking in his main deck, but also the 1 copy of Descend Upon the Sinful that would be pretty good against these Matter Reshapers. But something like Languish could just let Costantini flip over some lands, maybe already be in Titan territory with some of the Shrine of the Forsaken Gods.
Now, Costantini that turn put Liliana the Last Hope down to 1. As Narset Transcendent is at 8, Shaheen's very close to making an emblem with his Planeswalker. It seems to me that maybe Mark just doesn't care. He plans to play through this emblem.
Well, the thing about it is it says your opponent can't cast non-creature spells. Take a look at the non-creature spells in Mark's deck. Titan's Presence, Spatial Contortion, Warping Whale. The Warping Whale has some play here. It can counter the sorcery speed removal spells. That other stuff isn't going to do very much at all. For Hedron Archive, he's going to kind of miss, but he already has so many lands in play, and I believe that he already has an Oblivion Sower in hand, which can accelerate himself just by casting a creature. Yeah.
Saheen scries with his Oath. You mentioned that. What Mark's hand looks to be is he has an Oblivion Sower, a Kozilek the Great Distortion, and then some number of lands here. You see he's got those 2 Majoring Networks set off to the side. I would not be surprised if his plan here is just to ramp into that Kozilek as soon as possible.
Shouldn't take too much longer from here, especially if he just has 6th land Oblivion Sower on the following turn. Oblivion Sower really is going to shine against a deck like Shaheen's because he has a generally higher land count than most decks.
Saheen languishes away the Matter Reshapers. One of them flips into another Matter Reshaper. I kind of like that. I always said that reminds me of those skeletons in the Mario games that you jump on them, but then they just come right back.
Oh, the dry bones.
You could never get rid of them. Well, was it you could spin jump on them and then they go away forever?
I believe so.
I never really understood how that worked.
I mostly just ran past all of my enemies. I was kind of a pacifist Mario player.
We're going to go back to Mark. Saheen cleverly there shrunk the Matter Reshaper after Languish, so a good sequencing there will save him that Planeswalker. Oblivion Sower from Mark goes ahead and he's going to attempt to put a 1/1 counter on it with the Ruins of Oran Reef as well. He'll get 2 lands of Shaheen's. 1/1 counter on the Oblivion Sower.
All right, so pumping up the Oblivion Sower here with the Ruins. Kind of a minor thing. Saheen is looking for a clean answer, even against the 5/8 itself. Be really good at pressuring these Planewalkers. And now Mark, with those 2 additional lands, he has just 9 lands on the battlefield, +1 from the 1 major network that has 2 counters. He's already in Kozilek or Ulamog territory with the Kozilek in hand. So he has 4 cards in hand. He would be drawing for turn up to 5, can play a land, cast Kozilek. That would be a draw 4 from there. And given that Shaheen's deck goes so far up the curve, the Kozilek is going to be able to counter a lot of the stuff going on there. And Saheen picked up a Grasp of Darkness for turn. That's just nowhere near big enough to deal with the Oblivion Sower, though a Transgress the Mind is certainly going to be peeling this Kozilek from Mark's hand. So we see the hand of Westphal Abbey, Spatial Contortion, Kozilek, and second Oblivion Sower. There's just no way you can pass on that Kozilek.
Yeah, taking that card it's a draw 7 for Mark, or at least a draw 5. If you're playing control, that can't be allowed.
Yeah, and it comes with some free counter spells as well.
And the Planeswalkers continue to do their work. So go back to Costantini. Now, he does still have that 1 Oblivion Sower that was left there by Saheen.
Yeah, and he just picked up a copy of Rogue's Passage.
Oh, that one's a great one here.
If Shaheen's plan was just to chump block on the Sower, that's off the table. Yeah. So if you're Costantini, you're kind of factoring whether or not you think Saheen actually values having that Jace. Of course, you can just kill it outright.
Yeah, he Spatial Contortions away the Jace. I like the play from Mark, especially when the Narset emblem might be coming.
Right, yeah, you won't be able to cast that anymore. And once you let Saheen untap with the Jace, you can just activate it and flip it at any point in time. He already had 4 cards in his graveyard.
So Matter Reshaper and Oblivion Sower at Narset knocks her down to 2 loyalty. Mark continues to keep these Planeswalkers off their ultimates, but he just never gets them off the battlefield.
Yeah, he hasn't been able to do that just yet, though. As this game progresses, he is drawing to any of 3 copies of Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger, which would really clean up this board.
Another Oblivion Sower from Mark, another 1/1 counter from the Ruins. He gets a Swamp out of Shaheen's deck. We're back to Esper Control. And this feels like the part where you're saying that Saheen didn't like this matchup. He's reached the late game at 20 life, but I'm not sure he's winning.
No, it doesn't really look like he is at all. And now Costantini can start activating these Westphal Abbeys, making those cultist tokens, and building towards Ormondal. Saheen is very bad at pressuring Mark's life total, so he'll be able to generate those 1/1 tokens that are pretty free cost.
Yeah, now there is a 1-of in Shaheen's deck of the card Descend Upon the Sinful. If he can find that card with those scries, that will do a great job here. And I love this play from Saheen. Narset, he'll -2 it, so it's gone. His next spell has Rebound, and he'll cast Dark Petition. So he's going to get a Dark Petition this turn and another one next turn.
Pretty powerful, two tutors for the price of 1.
That seems great. Well, I love it on his upkeep next turn because that Spell Mastery will still kick in, which means he'll just have a ton of mana. I mean, he can only use the 3 black during the upkeep, but nonetheless, having a tutor on the same turn when you have all your lands untapped, this gives him so many options.
Could either use it for an instant or just choose not to care because he has plenty of mana anyway. Interestingly, Oath of Jace is kind of his Delirium enabler for his choice, his Descend Upon the Sinful Delirium. He used that Oath of Jace to discard some lands, so he has land, sorcery, creature, planeswalker already, so he is delirious.
Yeah, so he actually gets the angel on top of. I wasn't even thinking about that, but you're right. I was so excited about the exile all the creatures that I completely forgot that, yeah, this has another mode to it.
Yeah, you know what? While you're at the supermarket, you may as well get the extra value.
Shaheen digging through his deck. So he's got a set of 1-ofs here. 1 Ob Nixilis, 1 Ruinous Path, 1 Anguished Unmaking, 1 Silumgar's Command, and 1 Descend Upon the Sinful. These are the and 1 Emrakul. So those are the targets that he generally will find off this Dark Petition.
He's a little bit choked on mana if he wants to start casting Descend and then get into Emrakul. That's really his best avenue to closing this game. He's already in a position where his Planeswalkers are going to have a tough time sticking around on the battlefield. So getting that 13-13 down is probably his avenue to actually winning this game.
Sorin in Shaheen's hand, that one he already had. Liliana going to mill him and get a creature back, so here's Jace. And Shaheen's, I like that, he's going to cast it. Remember, he had those 3 black mana off of that Dark Petition.
Yep, and he did just put that Grasp of Darkness into his graveyard, so even though he got that creature back, he does still have Delirium, should he go for the Descend Upon the Sinful.
With his remaining 2 black mana, he's going to go ahead and cast Grasp of Darkness on Matter Shaper. It kills Matter Shaper, but Mark's rewarded with a Shrine of the Forsaken Gods.
And while Shaheen is slightly choked on mana, which is awkward to say for 6 lands on the table, Mark has so much more mana available.
Oh, I think Mark might have drawn Ulamog for the turn. You were talking about how that's just... Shaheen was trying to dodge that.
That's probably best possible.
Actually, I'm going to correct. I don't think it's we have Seagate Wreckage.
That is less good
less
than
good,
Ulamog.
yeah. We have Westvale Abbey, Seagate Wreckage, Shrine of the Forsaken Gods. So
something to keep in mind about Shrine of the Forsaken Gods, it taps for 2 colorless mana, but only to actually cast colorless spells, not to activate colorless abilities. So it's a little different than Eldrazi Temple in Modern.
So I can't go nuts with my majoring networks with it.
Right.
The Oblivion Sowers get our first damage in on the game. Shaheen loses his second Planeswalker and now is down to 14.
And Dark Petition coming back off rebound. We'll find out if Shaheen's trying to just cast an instant speed here, something to maybe deal with one of these Oblivion Sowers during his upkeep skep. Activates Jace, discards that Slumgar's Command. It's a little mopey relative to the 5+ mana stuff that Mark is doing, so not really the best matchup for Slumgar's Command. I like the discard there.
And there's the Descend Upon the Sinful. Mark's creatures exiled. Shaheen land and says go. He gets that Angel as well. He chumped with, now that, yeah, he does still have Delirium. Instant, so with that Grasp of Darkness that he cast, that gave him the end. So he had instant sorcery Planeswalker land.
Yep.
Back to Costantini. He's not going to have to draw off the top of his deck now, but his deck is rather capable of doing it. He's going to start with a Gaia Reach Sanitarium.
So Costantini has a ton of mana available and actually is capable of playing kind of a game, just activating these lands abilities if he wanted to just start making creatures with his Westvale Abbeys, something like that, and build up towards the Ormondal that way. I'm curious about continuing to activate these Mage Ring networks. It seemed like his best avenue is to actually just start using his lands to try to proactively assemble a game plan that way. Obviously, drawing an Eldrazi is amazing at this window here, so there is a temptation to activate that, but he does have tools available to be playing the game already, which I think that it might be better to take advantage of.
Well, he's been using his Gaia Reach Sanitarium every turn, and now he's gone down to 16 from the Angel token. So while that's a plus, his other utility card is this 4 of Spawning Bed, and it doesn't seem like he's been able to find any of them to help him activate those Westvale Abbeys.
Could still just be making 2 cultists every turn.
Yeah, well, with the Sanitarium, you're right. This is the first turn where he has enough mana to both make 2 humans 2 cultists, and use the sanitarium.
Yep. Though on this window, I do like that he has the Seagate Wreckage now, because that's actually just a better tool for drawing through the deck.
Yeah, there's no discard afterward.
You're not.
Saheen doesn't get to loot.
Exactly.
But Saheen just continues to go through his deck. Jace gives flashback to Dark Petition. Saheen casts it. He's going to try to close this window before Mark finds anything that he can do. Sorin, Grim Nemesis from Saheen. 3 mana tapped and that 3 mana off Dark Petition. Sorin will take down the Hedron Crawler.
He goes for some overkill with Sorin just to gain some extra life.
Yeah, that was really interesting. I was on -5 and I was thinking, wait, that's not... Hedron Crawler's not that big.
No.
It was a 1/2.
Basically, the idea is that the Sorin's not going to be able to kill 2 things for a while. Maybe he also just has a backup Sorin. You can keep this one around long enough to draw an extra card and then cast the other Sorin.
But by putting it to 1, he's now Mark Endstep made a cultist and looks like he can actually attack down the Sorin. I'm not...
That's bad news.
Yeah, I get him wanting to gain life. I kind of want him to be at 2 maybe instead of 1.
Yeah, it's not looking great here anymore.
Yeah, it looks like that cultist will finish off the Planeswalker. 1 card remaining in Mark's hand, and this time it is Ulamog.
Speaking of finish off the Planeswalker, you are right. This play looks very strange from Saheen, and it's kind of in not mattering territory, but it is still something.
This is just such the dangerous part of the matchup that we've gotten to turn, I don't know, what are we at, turn 15, and it's still in question for the control deck. But here's the last card out of Costantini's hand. It is Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger. He will exile away the Angel and the Jace. Put a counter on it with that one's going to matter, Mark. Counter on the Ulamog.
Why not?
The token will attack down the Sorin, and all of Shaheen's threats are answered. We go back to Saheen. And Marky T has left up Seagate Wreckage. He has no cards in hand.
And he used all the counters off of his Majoring Network that was on 4. I'm not sure that he can use all of his mana from this point. Maybe not the best land management from here.
Well, it seems like he wants to make sure he has that Seagate Wreckage available. Now, I suppose if he has enough mana, he can just start building those counters up again. He has a ton of lands.
Mm-hmm.
We pass back to Mark. Now, this game's been going on long enough that if Mark even gets 1 attack in with this Ulamog, the mill 20 should be near lethal.
Yeah, it's not going to be very relevant here, but you saw 1 land remained untapped. He did activate the Orange Reef, which wasn't very relevant on the Ulamog.
Sure.
Could have had a couple extra mana.
Well, Saheen will anguishly unmake the Ulamog. Mark, his draw for the Wreckage was a Sanctum of Ugin. Now he's going to loot with Skyreach Sanitarium. Looks like he'll discard one of his Sanctums. Sanctums just seems like another card. I'm thinking about how many live draws Mark has. And this is one of them. Here's Spawning Bed. Now he has enough mana to end of turn Spawning Bed and make Ormondal.
Yes. And that's something about this deck. There's a ton of play happening in the lands here. It's not as complicated as something like actual legacy lands, but he has a lot of decisions that he's making every turn.
All right, and now that the Spawning Bed has happened, Saheen pulls the trigger on the Emrakul, the Promised End that was in his hand. And Mark actually has some tools where Saheen can mess with Mark's hand a bit. He can sack the Spawning Bed. He can use Skyreach Sanitarium to make Mark discard his good cards.
Mm-hmm. Can empty out the Majoring Networks if there are any charge counters on them.
You know, that's something you're talking about in favor of cashing out that Majoring Network. Saheen has Dark Petitioned 3 times. If I'm Mark, I might just assume that Shaheen's going to Emrakul me at a moment's notice and might just cash out those counters.
You can always just empty the Majoring Network, right?
So, this is Saheen playing Mark's turn. He draws, we see 3 lands. See Rogue's Passage, Sanctum of Ugin. So Mark, he will first use the Skyreach Sanitarium. So both players loot. He had Mark discard the Sanctum of Ugin.
Controlling both players' loot probably feels pretty good.
Yeah, the Cultist will attack, Saheen will block. You feel like he's got to get rid of that Spawning Bed here.
And you can just you can activate the Spawning Bed and then just use the Scions for mana to no effect.
And that's what he's going to do. So Mark sacrifices the Spawning Bed, sacrifices all the Scions for nothing, and now Mark gets his own turn. I like that Saheen left Mark with 2 lands in hand also, so it's going to take a while for Mark to get into Seagate Wreckage territory again.
Mm-hmm. And he's on a 2-turn clock versus that Emrakul.
Yeah, 2 turn, maybe 1. I mean, Saheen plays a second Sorin.
Yeah.
I think Titan's Presence was the draw for Mark. Not quite big enough.
No, and Emrakul does have protection from instants.
So in a couple ways, Mark's going to play a Thought Knot Seer. He'll look at Shaheen's hand. I suppose if Shaheen has that Sorin, yeah, he'll take it. A swing of 13 and then a Sorin plus is very close to lethal.
Yeah, and the Grasp of Darkness can kill the Thought Knot, but the Sorin very likely to kill Mark.
So Shaheen will Grasp of Darkness the Thought Knot. And he's got 2 Shambling Vents. Activates 1. Swings 15. He didn't have enough white mana to activate both, so Mark goes to 1.
Mark has that Ruins of Orenreet untapped. He could have pumped the Thought Knot on the following turn.
Oh, he could have pumped it right away and then it'd be out of range of Grasp of Darkness?
Right, so...
that's big.
Yeah, another thing with these lands, there's a lot that you need to keep track of when you play this colorless Eldrazi deck.
Well, I think in Mark's situation, and this is something that I'll admit I've done all the time playing, is that he's in game 1 in a control mirror, and it's feeling like he's not going to win this game. And when you're in that situation, there's this big pressure on your side to say, I got to go fast. What if I lose this, I'm going to have to win 2 games in 29 minutes. And at some point, you know, you stop, you got to go quick, and that means you might miss something like that.
Yeah, you're definitely, and like I was saying, it's very complicated, but there's a lot of stuff that I think you should be very well practiced with this deck for exactly situations like this.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, I think the 1/1 counter, it could have mattered. It certainly would have bought him another turn. But game 1 goes to Saheen Soorani, the Esper Control Master. Takes it down against the colorless Eldrazi deck. Not exactly what I was expecting.
No, it's pretty surprising.
Well, it is Saheen, and I suppose you gotta give him credit on he knows what he's doing in these matchups.
And Mark drew quite a lot of cards to only find 1 Ulamog. A second Ulamog might have broken that game wide open.
Yeah, there was a lot of things going on wrong, right? When he finally found an Ulamog, he had no Sanctums in play. He plays 4.
Yep.
He had some Westvale Abbeys and no Spawning Beds. He plays 4. Like, these are areas where Mark's deck was not doing everything it could have done.
Right.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and look at the sideboards. They're going to be boarding. Remember, they are still on the clock, so they're going to be boarding rather quickly here. I'm just going to go ahead and pick out the winners here. What does Saheen do in this matchup?
I like Murder, Ruinous Path, Infinite Obliteration, even though there's multiple cards you want to name with it. That's a fine enough spot. Pick the Brain can be like another Infinite Obliteration, so that one's fine there. And I like Dragonlord Silumgar for the same reason that I like all the other removal spells. And then Ojutai's Command is another clean answer. It's just ways to deal with these large Eldrazi creatures.
All right, so on Mark Costantini's sideboard, I'm going to go ahead and, you were saying about earlier, and it looks great to me, those 4 Reality Smashers, they look like they'll be excellent against the Planeswalkers that Shaheen's presenting.
For sure, bringing those one in. There's a little bit of tension with Eldrazi Mimic because Saheen has Liliana the Last Hope.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So that one might not be great, but on the play, unanswered, that card is exceptional. So they probably come in, they might not end up playing out great. Endbringer's just another big fatty. He has all these instants that he wants to get out of his deck.
Yeah, Warping Whale, Spatial Contortion, Titan's Presence. I'm not really into any of those.
Right, so just converting that into bigger stuff I think is going to be the plan here.
If Mark's boarding all those out, does Saheen board out the card like Narset Transcendent? When you talk about boarding all those things out of Mark's deck, then the emblem seems even worse than it already was.
The emblem is really not what he's playing Narset for anyway. He's just trying to get that rebound on a spell to draw some extra cards, so Narset probably sticks around at least in some capacity.
All right, well, they're going to get ready. We're going to have a lightning fast here game in this control matchup. We're going to talk about the creature collection, though, that we've been having with Kaladesh. That's the set that comes out next. We have this art now on the creature collection playmat. So you can get these at a store near you. This is the Bengali Rye playmat. We're actually going to, okay, the creature is the Bone Chewer Giant. Hold on, switching gears here. This is part of our creature collection. This has been one of our game night ones. It, of course, is one of our commander staples, is Stone Hewer Giant out of Morningtide, or Bone Chewer Giant out of, well, his doghouse right there, standing. I think it's still morning. That looks like he's on the plane of Lorwyn.
Yeah, this would not be Shadowmoor or anything like that. This would play in Lorwyn. Dogs, I don't know if they find them on Lorwyn. Lorwyn doesn't have zombies or humans, and without humans, I find it hard to believe that there's dogs.
On Lorwyn?
Yeah.
Are there dogs? I mean, the Kithkin could have them as pets, right?
Theoretically, though, dogs are like as big as Kithkin.
That would be scary.
It's like having
agree.
a pet rhinoceros.
I don't know. That's what I feel like when I see people walking. Like, I'll see, like, you know, this like 5'0" woman walking a German Shepherd, and I'm like, that thing's bigger than you are. I'm terrified. All right, Transgress turn 2 from Saheen takes. We get a card out of Mark's hand.
He got a counter spell out of Mark's hand as Warping Whale countered the Transgress.
Fair enough. And no counter for this one, though. Matter Shaper from Mark, another Transgress, shows 2 more lands, Reality Smasher and Emrakul. Saheen will quickly take the Smasher, leaving Mark with Sanctum, Westvale Abbey, and that Emrakul.
And while Saheen has the Oath of Jace to get kind of the tricky Delirium online for some of his spells, Mark is not great at reducing the cost of that Emrakul, so it's going to take some time for that one to be cast here.
Sanctum from Mark, a swing for 3. We are back to Saheen. Swamp from Soorani, a 3rd Transgress the Mind. That takes Emrakul. Well, all right, now that he's taking care of all the cards in Mark's hand, he'll follow up with a Jace. This is just some straight ABCs of control.
Phenomenal poker hand. Turns out it's pretty good in this game of Magic, too.
What Transgress full of Jace is good in poker? What?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ace.
Okay, I'm with you. Liliana, the Last Hope from Saheen. We'll shrink down the Matter Shaper. Land and go from Saheen. 3 cards in graveyard. Jace isn't flipping just yet. Mark starts putting counters on this majoring network. He'd love to see a Reality Smasher. Finds a Kozilek in hand. Matter Shaper tries to swing at Liliana, but Saheen will block.
Yeah, you may as well check. Not like anything's cracking back at you.
Sanctum of Ugin from Mark. So you see that Mark right now has 7 mana available. He can crank the majoring up to 8, play a land. If he has another land, that Shrine of the Forsaken Gods means Kozilek happens next turn. Mark will draw 7.
Yeah, the majoring is going to be going up to 3, 2 additional lands for the shrines.
We'll see, though, whether or not Saheen flashes back that Transgress with Jace. He's not going to. He's going to play Sorin, Grim Nemesis. Draw a card, deal some damage to Mark, shrink the Matter Shaper, shrink the Matter Shaper again.
Yeah, picked up a choked Estuary.
3 Planeswalkers. Kozilek's got a lot of work to do here. But I think he's up to the task, or we'll see. Here's Shrine of the Forsaken Gods. There's enough mana on Mark's side to cast this Great Distortion.
This is a board state where Ulamog would be exceptional. Kozilek's still pretty good.
Well, Kozilek probably will draw the Ulamog.
Yeah, that is one of the things that Kozilek does. And given that a lot of this extra mana is coming off the shrines, he should be able to cast or be close to casting the Ulamog on the following turn.
So he's stacking his triggers here. He's casting Kozilek. It looks like he's finding Ulamog, and then he's going to drop to 7. Now, he could have done that the other way, right?
Yeah, stacked his triggers so that he draws first and then finds the Ulamog. He's already played his land, so he'd have to discard on this turn, but that's probably fine. He's going to pick up some lands here, right?
Yeah, so he's -1 card here, but it's still going to be great. You see he draws up to 7. A lot of tools available. He found the Ulamog you were talking about as well.
And interestingly, because he sacrificed that land, unless he has specifically Shrine, he doesn't have 10 mana on the following turn. So it might have been better just to draw up to 7, then actually determine whether or not you want to find the Ulamog right now.
Huge draw here from Saheen. He pluses the Sorin and draws Infinite Obliteration. That's just phenomenal, considering that he just saw what Mark got off the Sanctum of Ugin. He just knows this will hit.
Well, he didn't see what he got off the Kozilek, so if we can use that Kozilek Force of Will ability to counter it, that's what Mark is really looking for here.
He'll try. Is there a Matter Shaper? A 3 that he can discard? No, I see a 4, a 2, a 2. Now Ulamogs are gone.
That's brutal.
And like that might be the reason why Mark, if he stacks the triggers the other way, where he draws up to 7 and then finds Ulamog, he gets 1 more card, and maybe if that top card's Matter Shaper, this game changes.
Right.
Then he'll discard the wastes, he'll counter the Infinite Obliteration.
Mm-hmm. And he might think that a deck with no colored spells or colored mana would be kind of on the easy side to play, but Mark's deck looks like it has a ton of subtlety to it.
So I got to play my first big standard event last weekend. I played the regional Pro Tour qualifier in Moto, and in my testing for it, the one thing I realized is that I don't think there's an easy deck in standard right now.
Doesn't feel like it.
I played Temur Emerge, which I was like, a ramp deck. I can get behind this. It is the hardest ramp deck I have ever played.
No kidding. Blue-Green Crush looks like a headache on every front.
Anguished Unmaking will go ahead and go at Kozilek.
And still no 3 in Mark's hand.
No, he's really being punished for that.
And Warping Whale only able to counter sorceries.
Open competitor Alex Martin.
A draw of 7 last turn from Mark, just not getting it done. Here's Thought-Knot Seer. He takes the Narset out of Shaheen's hand.
And with Soren hanging out on 8,
Yeah.
thought not going to be long for this world.
We see Hedron Crawler, a pass. Now keep in mind, because Jace and Liliana teamed up, that Matter Reshaper actually has -1 power. So
Teamwork is very important.
this is how the Gatewatch defeated the Eldrazi. If you get enough minuses on the creature, it just can't attack.
Yeah, very flavorful thing we're seeing here. And there's the
There's-
Oath of Jace.
Yeah, it's part of, this is perfect. It's part of the Gatewatch plan. A draw 3, discard 2 from Saheen. Looks like he's going to hang on to Grasp of Darkness, pitching the other 2 cards, which are a Jace and a Choked Estuary.
Oath of Jace discarding Jace does not seem like the most flavorful interaction, I will say.
Well, Jace is already here.
Sure.
It's an imposter Jace.
Given the flavor text that I read, I imagine that Jace is too arrogant to ever discard himself.
Soren, -2 to take care of Matter Reshaper. It'll turn into Hedron Archive. Mark draws that, though, as it costs more than 3. A -3 from the Telepath means that Transgress will be given flashback. He'll transgress the Archive out of Mark's hand. And I like just that type of sequencing from Saheen. That was really strong.
Yep, knew he for sure had a hit. Wanted to
Right.
take it.
Then he grasps the Thought Knot and draws a card once he sees that the coast is clear. Just well played on all fronts. We go back over to Costantini.
And what Costantini is really looking for is some of those reality smashers off the top.
Well, there's one of them.
To start,
Ruins of Oran Reef here for Costantini. But what do you do with it? Which, I mean, if he wants to make it protect itself, he's got to kill the Sorin.
exactly. You really
But,
don't
ugh.
have, you can't pick any of the other ones, though. The other 2 make the smasher just smaller on the following turn. So it's just,
Yeah.
there's no good decisions.
I think the unfortunate part is, once again, we see Mark with the wrong colorless lands. If he had a Ruins of Oran Reef, he could have made the Smasher a 6/6 and finished off the Sorin. It would have been
Yep.
so much better.
And we saw it enter the battlefield tapped that turn.
Dragonlord Silumgar will take the Reality Smasher. When you're scrying 3 every turn, this is what happens. You can start drawing. Oh, look
You
at it.
draw
What a
good
great,
cards.
yeah, great card for the situation. A plus from Jace. And Mark extends the hand, so it is the Esper Master, Saheen Soorani 2-0, winning through this matchup. Saheen now on the SCG Tour here in Season 3 improves to 9-0 with Esper Control.
And